Okay. Ooh, if I can get this window here out of the way. There we go. Okay, so once again, thank you all for joining me here today for this informational session for the new grantees for the IBT grant for FY24. My name is Alex Weidenhammer. I am the Director for Workforce Training at the Illinois Community College Board, and I have been the direct contact here for the IBT grant for the past few years. So real quick, I want to start off with just a few kind of welcome and introductions. If you haven't already done so, be sure to sign into the chat with your name, your organization, and then also your email address. We do this so we can make sure we're keeping track of who's coming to meetings, and then also if we need to update anything, our contacts on our end. So for today, what we're going to start off with is just a overview of the grant. So we're going to go over the purpose of the grant, target objectives, allowable activities, and then also we're going to move into some fiscal components such as contacts, going over some of the templates. Aside from that, we're also going to go into the reporting requirements. I'm going to show a few snapshots of the quarterly reporting template, and then also the budget modification forms. Aside from that, once we're done with the main overview, we're going to go into the next step of the award process. I've had a few questions come in here asking, how soon can we expect these grant agreements? And I can assure you that they're going to be moving your way soon. And then finally, to conclude, if you have any questions or anything during the course of the presentation, feel free to type those in the chat. I'm going to allot some time here after the presentation to answer any questions you have. And then also, if you just want to ask questions here towards the end. So first and foremost, congratulations to everybody who was selected for the IBT grant this year. We had a lot of great applications come in. And one thing me and Levon talked about as we were going through the selection process is that each year these grants just continue to get better and better. So like I said, there was I think over 70 applicants this year. So, and then from that, 44 applications were funded with that total amount allotting to over. So just to reorient ourselves, kind of, like I said, this is some general information taken from the NOFO, but I think it's important that we take some time to reorient towards why we're here, why we're in the IBT initiative, right? So the main purpose of the grant, which aligns with the goals of the Illinois Community College Board, is to provide equitable access to all students regardless. Oh, I'm sorry, was there a question there? Sorry, didn't mean to stop that real quick. So once again, the IBT grant is meant to create or support programs that improve student transitions to and through post-secondary education up to the post-baccalaureate level, and into employment and programs that support these transitions for especially individuals with disabilities. And once again, the main goal is to scale programs that promote equity and diversity among all of our participants served. We recently did a sort of a data collection about the number of participants that were fully served during the course of the FY23 grant, and it was almost 8,000 participants and students that were served through that. So we realize, this funding is very important. It's very integral because it's reaching so many different students all across the state. So once again, our target populations, the main target population is anyone 16 years of age or older. And this can be split into, here, I'm going to kind of move this window. There we go. Adults who are not enrolled in high school, and then youth who are in school preparing to enter post-secondary education or training programs. So the definition for adults not enrolled in high school, so these are adults who have limited academic or basic skills. They might be underemployed or unemployed. And the programs for the IBT grant are meant to be designed to help them succeed in credit-bearing post-secondary education and inevitably lead them to training in those high-skill, high-wage, and in-demand occupations. That's one thing that we really stress with the IBT grant is finding those key industry sectors where our students can have the best outcomes. So for in-school youth, so there's a stipulation here with the in-school youth for serving them. So it's only an allowable activity if the services to this population is going to prepare them to to enter directly into post-secondary education and training following their graduation through their K through 12 education. And then for this year, and this was mentioned in the FY FY24 Bidders Conference, we have a new population that we're also serving, which is out-of-school youth. If any of you are familiar with the ESLTP grant, this kind of is a way that we are reaching this population of students through the IBT grant as well.
So what does FY24 look like? Okay, so they changed it from 23 to 24. This is 5 months.
I'm sorry, can I ask everybody to mute their...
You were right.
Sorry about that. I just want to make sure that we can get the presentation here. So once again, for out-of-school youth, this is aimed at helping the population become reoriented and motivated to complete their education. And it also allows them to participate in career and work training activities as well. But the overarching goal for this population is to help them reach that completion of their high school equivalency credential, because that's the basis for entry into post-secondary education and also training. One way to do this, I'm sure if you've been working in this space in adult education and just, well, with these grants in particular, the ICAPS system is one of the major ways that you can do this. And when it comes to that, my colleague, Angela Gerber, she's the director for workforce education. She oversees all of the ICAP approvals, ICAP structure, everything like that. So I'll be sure to share her contact information if you are planning on serving this particular population as well. So real quick, let's go over the grant objectives. So there are 4 objectives for the IBT grant. And I'm not going to read all this verbatim, but I think it's, like I said, it's very important that we're kind of reorienting, getting our minds focused on what we're here for, right? So for objective 1 is the creation of adult education bridges and integrated education and training programming. So the bridges and IETs. For this objective, during the application process, we had questions about, well, you know, if we're expanding on one of our bridges or IETs, would we choose objective 1? Objective 1 is for creating new and greatly expanding bridges, right? Those include basic reading, math, language skills, occupational competencies, and also employability skills. So one thing to note here, and I want to point this out, is this objective should not supplant required bridge and IET activities under the WIOA Title II Adult Education and Literacy FY23, that's a typo there, for FY24 implementation. Okay, so for objective 2, we have seamless transitions for career and college and career pathways.
Said, they aren't registered yet, so I don't know. I think, like so I'll say, it has to be a conversation of what population should they get the message aren't enrolled yet.
Excuse me, might have to.
A year and a half, but it makes sense to send it to them. Probably not. But I think the other challenge is.
Excuse me, can I ask everybody to mute their?
Things like that. So I think it just like looking at that whole strategy.
Okay, so let's keep moving on here. So for objective number 2, this is where the biggest changes come in this year, because we have decided to split up objective 2 into 4 distinct objectives, with the inclusion of objective 2D, which is focused on the out-of-school career youth career programs. So for objective 2A, that's going to focus on curriculum alignment between secondary and post-secondary institutions. 2B focuses on dual credit programming, CTE program of study development implementation, and then also college and career pathway endorsement activities. 2C, we've seen all across the state that apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships have become a matter of focus when it comes to workforce development and a lot of educational programs. So we're trying to focus in on that. And then also for objective 2D, that's once again focusing on the out-of-school youth career activities. For objective 3, so we have wraparound support services. We know that one of the major goals of the IBT grant is also not only to provide those transitions into post-secondary education and into career programs, career exploration programs, but also to take down barriers for our students as well. So if for objective number 3, these services could include academic advising, career pathway navigation, tutoring, any sort of supplemental instruction, focus on study skills, coaching, and referrals for individual support services. So these would be basic needs, including housing, transportation, childcare, food costs, and stipends for technology. This is objective number 3 is really one of the more flexible options when it comes to the IBT grant itself. And one thing that I like to stress as well is that no matter what objective that you choose for your project, wraparound services can still be utilized in every single one of the other objectives if you're serving students, right? And recently, last year, the ICCB, we released our stipend, sort of our stipend advising document. So that'll show everybody exactly how you can utilize the IBT funds, the state funds, to provide stipends for your students. And one thing that I'm going to do after this meeting is include that document in my follow-up email. So be sure to look at that. And if you have any questions about, what's allowable, what can you use wraparound support services for, feel free to reach out to me with questions for that. And for objective 4, so for seamless transitions for students with disabilities, once again, we have seen there has been a large interest all across the state in designing programs, vocational, psychological, counseling programs, traditional educational services for students with disabilities. So one thing to note here is these programs may include transitions from high school to college, as well as college to employment. So there's 2 different routes these kind of programs can be structured. And moving forward here, now we're going to focus on some key fiscal information, just a few reminders, and I'm going to go over a few items when it pertains to revisions for the grant as well. So here's some quick information about grant accountability. So one thing to note here is that here at the top, you want to make sure that you have access to the Grant Accountability Transparency Act grantee portal, which is right here. So the pre-qualification process, you'll be provided a UEI identifier verification of good standing, which will include financial and administrative risk assessments. So this is taken from our earlier PowerPoint. So it says before submitting, make sure that you are registered in SAM. And once again, the link down here for that is here. So when it comes to sending out our grant agreements, the ICCB will not be able to make an award to an applicant until the applicant has fully complied with all the applicable UEI and SAM requirements. So this also applies to making sure that there is a compliance with the federal laws and regulations pertaining to non-discrimination, sexual harassment, and also equal employment. So once again, this is just a reminder, if you are unsure about your status in either of these 2 items, be sure that you go back and you review that. As I said earlier, the grant agreements are going to be on their way here shortly. Okay, for the revised budgets, I've sent out just before the holidays a number of feedback forms to a majority of all of our grantees, just to do some revisions on the budgets, to show the new allocated adjustment amount. When it comes to submitting those budgets, I've had a few questions. Do I need to submit the whole budget over again if it needs to be signed, or do I just need to provide like an email to you showing what my revisions were? So you have to send in a completely new budget template that has been signed and verified. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. Because once again, we know that we funded 44 programs, but there were some adjustments made to a few of the programs as well. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that we have all of the verified records on our end ready to go. If you haven't completed your budget form yet, or your revisions, one thing to note is you want to be as detailed and specific in completing the budget as possible. So when you're completing the budget, in each one of the line items, there is a narrative section where you are going to describe the rationale or the purpose of utilizing the funds in that line item. And that's one thing that we've really stressed, is to make sure that those are as specific as possible, because once these budgets go to our grants management division for that final review, we want to make sure if there's any questions that arise, or if there's all the information's there, so if questions do arise, it's there in the narrative for our reviewers. Once again, too, is the budget items must follow the guidelines set forth in the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, or EDGAR handbook. So this is the this is the book that will provide any sort of answers you have about if something's allowable and things like that. So one thing to note here is there is no match requirement for the IBT grant as well. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind as you're completing your budgets and reviewing them. For the main contacts, so this is a very important slide here, because it kind of keeps things moving smoothly on your end and our end, right? So for your quarterly reports, you want to make sure that you're sending your quarterly reports both to the ICCB grants payments mailbox and then also the ICCB.IBT mailbox. The grants payments mailbox is our fiscal division. So they complete the fiscal review in that sense. And then the IBT mailbox is my team's mailbox to complete the programmatic view. So by sending it to both of these mailboxes, you're ensuring that everybody on our end who conducts these reviews each quarter is able to have access to that. Because we've kind of had situations here and there where, say, I'll directly receive quarterly reports, but then I learn, oh, well, I haven't seen these so-and-so's quarterly report. And, we have to kind of go back and forth like that. So this is just kind of a quality of life thing, I guess I could say, for everybody involved. If you have any financial compliance questions, those will go to the ICCB finance mailbox listed here. Also for budget modifications. So at any time that you complete a budget modification during the life of the grant, you want to make sure those are sent to both the grants payments mailbox and also the IBT mailbox. Because once again, those budget modifications go through a programmatic and a fiscal review as well. And just for a quick clarification, quick reminder, there are no payment requests with the IBT funds. Everything is received upfront with the execution of the new grant. Okay, and now we get to our grant reporting section. So once again, this is another very, very important section that we're going to focus in and hold on here. And I have a few examples I want to show everybody. So for the reporting schedule, you'll note here that our grant, the IBT grant, falls into the calendar grant cycle. So it runs from January 1st of 2024 to December 31st, 2024. Once again, just another reminder, I keep kind of trying to hammer that point home. All reports are being submitted to these two mailboxes. But you'll note down here is the schedule for those quarterly reports. So our first quarterly report will be due April 30th, 2024. And then down in this box, the second one underneath, it'll show which grant period that covers. So it'll be from January 1st until March 31st. And both of these reports, they cover both performance, so the programmatic side, and a financial component as well. So be sure that, if you want to save this table somewhere when I send out the PowerPoint here later, or write it down however you do your record keeping, make sure that you remember this schedule as the grant's moving forward. For the format of the quarterly report, so it's a fiscal, performance, and narrative all in one document. And I'm going to show a few snapshots here. I think it's this next slide, actually, where I'm going to go through how it's actually set up. So the way we've tried to set it up with the IBT grant is that the fiscal report and then also programmatic are all contained in one single document for ease of access and also for submission. So you'll note that there will be a tab for the actual budget, and there'll also be multiple tabs for each of the additional quarters, which I'll show that here in a few minutes. And the reason we do this is that these reports are set up with a formula to automatically accumulate both on the fiscal tabs and also in the programmatic tabs. So hopefully everyone can see this, and the same budget is used every single year. This is the uniform grant reporting budget template. So how it will work is that this will be the first tab within that Excel document that we'll send you. And you'll note here, there are boxes for quarter one, quarter two, there's accumulation boxes, so on and so forth, moving through until there's the total. You have to enter the actual approved budget. And what it will do as you're entering each quarter, it'll automatically accumulate. So say for the first quarter, you'll put in your information here of how much was spent, and that will automatically accumulate here. And then when you go back to enter your information for quarter two, it'll also do the math for you in this section as well. And then it carries on and so forth as that. It'll also automatically calculate the remaining balance and then also show the expenditure level for each of the line items, totaling up here at the bottom. Down at the bottom of the fiscal tab, also, you'll see that there's the authorization for each quarter. So make sure that when it comes time to submit those reports, that everything is filled out down here, that we have the proper authorizing contact signing off on these reports. And then for the actual programmatic side, so when you click into the individual tabs for the reporting template, you'll note there's a tab for quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and also quarter four. So it's set up in a way where at the very top, we have our milestones and goals. So this would be the area where you would enter narrative explaining what were some, what goals did you reach during the grant? What were some important success stories that happened? that information would go here in that top box. And then you'll also see here, there's one for challenges and barriers. We note that, not everything always goes according to plan when it comes to grants, right? I mean, there's all sorts of challenges that we face. I mean, if, the pandemic was any sort of example of that, we can see that, this box is much needed, right? But in this box, you'll put in any sort of challenges or barriers that you encountered. And it's important to fill out this box in particular, because as we're conducting our quarterly reviews, we want to be sure that we, on our end of the ICCB, are have as much information as possible. So if any questions arise, we have all that background information for each one of the programs. Okay, so down here at the bottom, you'll note there's a big old space down here. This is where you'll actually enter your performance measures and your deliverables. So when you completed that planned performance measures chart during the application process, and that was also a focus of the edits that I requested here before the holidays, kind of making sure those work out and look the way that we need them to. Those planned performance measures, once they're approved and you sent them in, you'll enter those directly into this box right here. And then for each quarter, there should be that quantifiable result, and you'll put those here into that left column as such. And one thing I can do here after we're done with the meeting is I can actually, I'll open the actual document itself and do another just run through just to show you exactly how it functions as well. But these quarterly tabs and programmatic tabs are also built in a way to be cumulative as well as you progress through each quarter. Okay, and then for budget modifications. So for future budget modifications, after this meeting, I'm also going to send out the template for the IBT budget modifications. One rule and one thing to kind of note is that the IBT works from the GOTA 10% rule. So any budget modification with a line item change of more than 10% or $1,000, whichever is greater, will require the ICCB's approval. If it's below 10% or below $1,000, that kind of falls under your umbrella for how you're going to move those funds. But if there is a large, like I said, more than 10% or more than $1,000, whichever one of those is greater, you will need to submit a budget modification form. One thing to note is do not initiate the new budget until the ICCB has responded. So once again, be sure to send any budget modification requests to these two mailboxes listed on the slide here. And then real quick, here's a snapshot of what that budget modification form will look like, right? So you can see, once again, everything's broken out by line item. When you're completing your budget modification, you'll want to enter the original budget amounts into this column here. This column will be used for showing where the subtraction and the additions of those funds moving between the line items will be reflected. So say if you're going to move out, $10,000 from personnel, minus 10,000 would go here, and you're going to move it into equipment, right? You'd reflect that change here. And then also the form should be set up in a way where it automatically tabulates those amounts here in this column. And then at the bottom of the form is where you'll have to provide the rationale for the change. So first off here, so one thing I want to say here real quick is sometimes there's some confusion with these terms here.
Thank you so much for the answer. The other question is that.
Oh, was there a question for me, or was that just? No? Okay. So here you'll have the reason for the modification. So in these boxes here, you will write in the narrative of what was the rationale for the modification. Like I said earlier, say if you had originally planned on hiring 4 staff for the project, but you were only able to hire 2, you'd put that information here, right? In the original activity description, you'll put in what were the funds originally allotted for. And then for the new activity description, say if, like, for example, you're moving money from personnel and you want to move it into equipment, right? You say, well, we decided we couldn't hire those 2 additional staff, so we took that money and we decided there's been interest in this equipment for this program, and we want to make sure that we have that for our students. You'd put that information here. And then what would be the expected outcome of this budget modification? How would it change your project and the goals? And then down here at the bottom will just be make sure that you have the proper authorizing official signing that. It's not shown here in this particular example, but there will also be a section for the ICCB. So once we approve it, it will be signed by one of our one of our grants management staff, and it will be sent back to you for your records and saved for ours. So we have that on our end as well. Okay, and one thing this is the operational meeting schedule. So one condition of award is that all grantees are required to, as designated by this schedule, attend these operational meetings that we're going to have once per quarter. So you'll note here that the first one we're going to have is from April 10th on 2024. The time frame always stays the same. It's from 10:30 to 11:30. These operational meetings are a good way for us each quarter to touch base with everyone out there working in the field, to kind of once again make some important announcements, focus on any sort of maybe major issues or questions that have arisen. So providing a really direct line of technical assistance to all of you is why we set up these operational meetings as well. And on top of that, we also use it as a time for peer networking for everyone in the grant. We like to make sure there is a time for discussion groups amongst yourselves. The topics will change between each operational meeting. They'll never really be the same because once again, new things arise and we want to make sure that we're addressing all that. The one thing to note here is that the November 13th meeting will be a non-mandatory meeting. So just kind of keep that in mind. All these meetings are virtual, so you won't have to drive anywhere or anything like that. It'll just be held here on Zoom as well. And one thing to note is, as designated above, all the grantees must attend all the required meetings. Just like today, I've had a few of you reach out and say, well, I can't have staff on, or I couldn't come to the meeting today. Will it be recorded? These meetings will also be recorded as well. So if for some reason you can't make it, if there's some sort of emergency or you're traveling for work or something like that, we want to make sure that we're getting that information, and we'll send out those recordings shortly after. Okay, so to kind of come towards the end here, the award process, so our next steps. So right now, our grants management division is currently drafting the grant agreements, and they should be sent out they said roughly by the end of next week is when they should start having those sent out to everybody. So once that grant agreement is generated, it'll be sent out to the program contact that we have on file. And all of those program contacts we took directly from the applications. So one thing you have to make sure to do is that once those grant agreements are sent out to you, be sure that they're signed immediately by the appropriate person within your institution, and then send those back to the contact that sent it to you from the ICCB. Once you have sent it back to us, our executive director, Brian Durham, will conduct his review, and then he will send a counter agreement, countersigned. And then once everything checks out, everything will be executed, and we will have that saved on file, and you may also save that for your records as well. So we want to make sure that we're getting started as soon as possible and making sure that we have everything verified and ready to go for FY24. So as I said, as soon as you receive that grant agreement, make sure that you get that to that corresponding contact with your institution and get that signed. So that sums up our presentation for today. I covered a lot of information. So I want to take a moment here just to answer any questions you might have. If you want to go ahead and just unmute and say your question, feel free to, or if you want to type it in the chat, we can do that as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here as well. I'm going to go ahead and start checking the chat and make sure that if there's any questions that did pop up during the course of the presentation.
Alex, I have a question. This is Chantel Savage Bryant from DAC.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Okay.
Actually, I have two questions.
Sure.
Okay. So the amount that we requested and the amount that we were actually awarded are different. So we have to change some programmatic things or whatever in addition to the budget. I've already submitted the changed budget. Do I have to submit a modification to our program activities? Because our numbers are going to decrease.
I see. Okay. So what you'll want to do is, in reflection of the new budget, so the changes, the numbers will be in the actual performance measures chart. So once you send, so when you send in your revised budget, you'll also want to send in that revised performance measures chart as well to also reflect those changes.
Okay, I've already sent the budget, so I will send the performance measures ASAP.
Of course. Okay. And if you have any questions while you're completing that chart as well, sometimes there's a little bit of confusion, stuff like that when it comes to that chart as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to set up a time or anything like that for you.
Okay, and second question, and I'm
Yes.
sorry not to get all super in the weeds or whatever, but
Mhm.
a lot of the programs that we are offering are 2-semester programs, but given like the kind of the short window that we had, we
Mhm.
weren't able to implement it in the spring semester, but we can start in the fall. Does a certification have to be reached by the end of the grant in order for the student to be considered successful? So if it's a 2-semester situation, but they
Mhm.
can't start until the fall and the grant ends in December, you know, am I making sense?
Yes, and I'm trying to kind of think about that. So the students would actually be completing their certifications after the
Yes,
grant cycle ends.
yes.
Okay, so they would technically, since they are participating in the IBT funds, those would technically be recorded as participants, right?
Okay.
So, and one thing in that maybe in that final report that you send in for Q4, you would note that these students are currently working and they will have their certifications complete by the end by this point in the year. So we have that on record. So we know that you're serving 50 students and they're all getting certifications. You can in that final report designate this many students are going to be completing um, their certification after the grant cycle ends.
Okay, very good. Thank
Mhm.
you.
No problem. Does anybody else have any questions? I didn't see anything in the chat.
Hi, Alex. It's Tanika from North Lawndale.
Hi, Tanika.
Hi, I just have a quick question
Sure.
on insuring. Um, will we reach out to you just to kind of see who you have down as program contact?
Yeah, so if you're a little unsure about who the program contact is, if you want to reach out to me, I can go ahead and look back through because like I said, all of the program contacts were taken from the uniform grant application that was submitted for everybody. So if you think there's somebody who needs to be added to the contact list, or maybe somebody
Mhm.
changed jobs or something like that and they moved out, we can
Mhm.
make sure we have that change reflected.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so Sabrina, so today's meeting recording will be sent out. Yes, so it takes a little bit of time for us to convert the recording into the file for the for our ICCB YouTube page. So that's where all of our recordings will go, is on the ICCB YouTube page. And once that conversion is complete, I will let everybody know. It will be made available on the ICCB website as well. And then Chantal, yes, so I'm going to send out quite a few things here after this meeting concludes. I'm going to send out a copy of this presentation. I'm also going to send out the quarterly reporting template for all of you as well. So you can start taking a look at that. And if you have any questions about how it works or anything like that, or if there's any sort of issues that arise too, like if you're going through and something's not working properly, feel free to reach out with that. And then I'm also going to send out the budget modification form, so you have that for your records as well. So will we report in DAISY? So this is a question that's come up quite a bit. When it comes to DAISY and reporting, so this isn't technically tied to adult education. So when it comes to reporting in DAISY, we kind of leave that up to all of the colleges or all the programs as well. I've had conversations with Kathy Olthen Tracy about how to report in DAISY, and I will refer to her and talk with her, and we might have maybe an informational session for everybody about how to go about reporting IBT students within DAISY. So great question.
Alex, this is Michelle with Joliet Junior College.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, I have just a question. Is there a rubric or an area where we can look and see basically if you didn't receive all of your funding, what some of the reasons might be so that we can improve if we ever rewrite a grant?
Yeah, so one thing I will note is that all of you who were selected this year, you all had wonderful grants. I mean, you scored like in our very highest percentile. It just when it came down to making the selection process, there was a cost per participant model that was set in place so we could fund as many programs as possible. So even though, there was those adjustments made and some programs didn't receive their full amount, I will say it's not a reflection of the quality of your grant itself. It was a decision made on our end to make sure that we could fund as many programs as possible. But if you do want to see your rubric, I have that on file and I can get that sent to you. I've had a lot of questions coming in about that, and we're trying to make sure that we're focusing on going through the award process here. And I am reaching out to everybody who is interested in seeing their rubrics. So if you want to go ahead, if just for my records, if you want to send me an email requesting that, once I go through and I'm starting to reach back out to everybody, I have your name on my list.
That would be great. Thank you, Alex.
And I see here in the chat that others are asking the same question. So the same thing would go. Make sure that you send in an email to me just requesting that you'd like to see your rubric, and I'll be sure to reach out accordingly. Okay, and then Tiffany, what can I do for you?
Yes, just to piggyback off of Michelle, is this the first year you guys have looked at the cost per participant? Because had we been aware that there was a behind the scenes calculation, things probably would have been a little bit different for us. So I'm just curious if this is the first time, or if even it's not the first time you guys have done the cost per participant, why were we not informed? Or if we were, when and how?
Okay, yes, that is a discussion that we have had here at the ICCB, and that's something that has come up. To my knowledge, yes, this is the first time that the cost per participant model was implemented for the IBT grant. And one thing that we have noted is that we always like to have transparency with all of you, right? Because you're all the ones who are doing this great work out there in the field, and we want to make sure that we're not, doing something behind the scenes that's, kind of eroding that trust or that transparency. I still need to get in contact with my executive staff to kind of have a more clear answer to that question. But I will be sure to, once I receive that information, just a bit more background on that, I will be sure to reach out back to everybody. It'll probably come up during one of our operational meetings, but if before then as well, if you want to set up a time and have a more of a dialogue on that, we can do that as well, Tiffany.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem. Hi, Maggie, I see your hand up there. What can I do for you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So, I wanted to just kind of, again, plug into what's been talking about, when we talk about
Yep.
students, and by the way, for everybody's knowledge, my name is Maggie Wolf, and I'm the Director of Adult Ed at Joliet Junior College. I work with Michelle and Mandy, who are both on this call. When you're talking about a number of students impacted, sometimes that is not necessarily well represented, because we might be building something,
Right.
serving a few students this semester, but it will last and it will go on and serve people exponentially moving forward. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily an appropriate matrix. Okay, that's all.
Well, thank you for that, Maggie. Yeah.
You have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, and then Linda, I had a question here. Could you repeat the end of what you said about Daisy? I lost audio for a bit. You're sending something out about Daisy. Yes, so what I'm planning on doing is reaching out to Kathy Olson-Tracy. She's the Senior Director of Adult Education. When it comes to the IBT grant, we've had a lot of questions come from programs over the years about reporting their adult education students that are being served through IBT funds. So I'm going to consult with her and then see if she has any guidance on making sure how we go about reporting IBT students properly within Daisy as well. So I'll be sure to be reaching out here probably by next week. I'll be able to send something out to everybody regarding adult education students in Daisy with IBT funds. Okay, was there any other questions? Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and I'll conclude today's meeting. You'll get a little bit of time. Oh. Yes, yes, Yvonne. Yeah. I'll be sure, or Yvonne, I'll be able to get out those rubrics to everybody. I want to make sure that I provide as much information to all of you as possible when it comes to how we went about the scoring process. So If there's no other further questions, I will go ahead. I'll end the meeting today, and you can expect a follow-up email from me here later today with all those templates, with today's presentation, and also just a quick update on the PowerPoint recording as well. So once again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy days, and thank you for being patient with everything that happened on Tuesday. Really looking forward to the coming year.
Thank you, Alex. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks you, Alex.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, just another quick question, Alex. Sorry. Oh, for the rubric, you're going to send them automatically, or should we send you a reminder or something?
I would send me an email reminder, yes, because we're not going to be. It's good. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.